What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in today for another episode of Niners News here on 49ers Hive. My name is Zach Hernandez, and I'm joined by co-host Matt Llewellyn. And today we're going to be talking about the 49ers recently signing former Washington football team tight end Jordan Reed. Matt, what were your initial thoughts on this?
It was an interesting signing from the fact that it's another former Kyle Shanahan guy. He's a guy with an extensive injury history, but when he is healthy, he's one of the best tight ends in football. So from that aspect, it's kind of a high risk, high reward situation. You know, it's very likely that he's going to be on injured reserve at some point. That's just how his career has gone, unfortunately. But, you know, you never know. This could be, hey, maybe the 49ers get one good year out of him to make a Super Bowl run. And when he is on the field, he's one of the most dynamic tight ends that the league has seen in a long time. So for me, it's just one of those things where it's going to be, you know, it's a heavily incentive-laden contract where he's not going to be making a ton of money. It doesn't, you know, some people I saw on Twitter saying like, oh man, I'm so worried about George Kittle now. What does this say about George? It doesn't say anything about George. You have to understand, and, you know, we'll get to this later because there's other rumors out there about them picking up pieces. A lot of this has to do with the fact that we are going through a pandemic in our country, and the extra depth is just going to help. That's why there's expanded rosters this year. That's why there's all this other stuff. You want to get as many bodies as you can in here and early enough that you can learn the playbook. You can, you know, try to contribute the best that you can because, you know, heaven forbid one of the 49ers players comes down with, you know, coronavirus and has to go on the shelf and has to go on the reserve list. You have another guy right there ready to step in who's been here since the first day of camp. So from that perspective, it just makes the most sense to me.
Two things you touched on there that stood out to me. One, Kyle Shanahan, he loves his former players. He loves guys that are familiar with his system. We've seen it in Tevin Coleman. He brought on Logan Paulson. He just, no matter where you are, if you play with a little bit of Kyle Shanahan, he loves loyalty. I feel like that stands above everything else to him, and familiarity with his system. You know, he probably thinks this is a guy that's going to be able to come in day one and probably know about 80% of what we're doing here. So why not go with it? And two, definitely the insurance. That's what I saw this as. I saw this as an insurance signing in case, like you said, somebody gets COVID, somebody was around somebody that has COVID, and then they're suddenly off the team for 2 weeks. You know, so it's just, this isn't normal. I keep saying that, you know, to everybody, nothing is normal anymore. There is no normal. So it's like, this is going to be the new normal going into the NFL, is getting as many good guys to the position. I know it kind of sounds funny because that's what you're probably thinking, Zach, that's what they've always done. But no. Now they're really doing it. Now they're really trying to get as many starting caliber players at each position, regardless of who they have there and their number one spot on the depth chart, because you never know what's going to happen. So I was kind of, I don't want to say surprised by the signing personally, but it did take me back a little bit in the sense that they were rumored to be looking at Jordan Reed and former Tennessee tight end, former 49er, Delanie Walker. Why do you think they went with Jordan Reed over Delanie Walker, Matt?
It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. I know 49er fans are really familiar with Delanie Walker. He was here in the Jim Harbaugh era, and he was really good. And, you know, it was sad to see him go. I actually preferred him over Vernon Davis. I thought Vernon Davis was a little bit of the sizzle, while Delanie Walker was more of the steak and, you know, the meat and potatoes. You know, Delanie Walker has been sought out by other teams as well. And again, if you're looking at just a depth piece and people speculating on how this affects George Kittle, I don't think Jordan Reed does, because he has such an extensive injury history and he's such a high risk that Jordan Reed's going to be willing to take that contract, and there's no other teams that are going to bid up his services. Delanie Walker still has enough respect around the league where you hear teams like, you know, the New England Patriots could be interested in him. You know, there's a couple others that could be interested in him. And so then you look at yourself, oh, am I going to get into a bidding war? And if you get into a bidding war, now you are eating up cap that needs to go towards that Kittle extension. So for me, the Jordan Reed signing, because the fact that, you know, he was drafted in the third round the last season that Mike Shanahan was the coach of the Washington Redskins, and obviously, or now the Washington football team, and Kyle was there as well. So they're familiar with him. They picked him. So, and you know, you said that Kyle likes to pick the guys that he thinks are loyal. Kyle also is kind of in love with the way that he picks players. He's in love with his guys. So if there's, we saw that with Tevin Coleman. So if there's any way that, hey, I can get a guy in here that I know that I helped, pick and was the process of, same thing with Kirk Cousins. He was there and he wanted Kirk Cousins before Jimmy G came to San Francisco. And so, he's got this thing where he really likes the players that he picks, that he identifies. That's why, for better or for worse, I expect CJ Beathard to make the roster again this year. It's just there's something about him that Kyle Shanahan likes. So I expect the same with Jordan Reed. And then when you add in the fact that nobody really was bidding for Jordan Reed's services, it makes him a cheap depth option. It's kind of like the Jason Verrett situation where it's just like, hey, let's just roll the dice and see what happens. There's really no downside to it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. He goes on IR. Doesn't really cost us a bunch. And, if it does work out, then great. We get more talent to make a Super Bowl run. So for me, there's really no downside. There's just somebody that, at his best can complement George Kittle. And I saw on Twitter that people were talking about, man, the way this could open up the 49ers offense down to the red zone by running play actions with Reed, and Kittle, and perhaps a third tight end. You're running 3 tight end sets and they still don't know whether you're going to pass or run. That could definitely bolster the 49ers offense. So if Reed can even be, a part of what he used to be and stay healthy, it's a win for the 49ers.
And on top of that, they look like geniuses. Let's just say they look smart. They look like they made the right move. Because if it doesn't work out, I believe I read that the majority of the contract is incentive based and non-likely to be earned incentives, which if I understand it correctly, they earn differently against the cap, count differently against the cap. So, they're not on the hook for a lot of money here if it doesn't seem to work out. But at the same time, if it works out, everybody's like, man, nobody was even thinking about Jordan Reed, and Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch went out and found this guy, and now they're lethal. And adding to your point that, they could have a really, really good tight end set. Clinton Portis himself, former Washington football team member, was talking to 95.7 The Game today. And he said, I think that this edition of the offense with Kittle and Jordan Reed is amazing. This could possibly be the best tight end crew of all time. Do you think that's a little, going a little above and beyond there? Or do you think that he's got some truth there?
It has to be done. I saw the other comparisons to Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez minus, the off-field issues with Aaron Hernandez. It could be like that. It needs to be established for a period of time. For, a flash in the pan, maybe. There's not a lot of teams these days that run tight end sets the way that the 49ers do. And it's not the old tight end sets of, the 80s and the 90s where the tight ends were mainly inline blockers for the running game, didn't really catch a lot of passes. That was back in the day where, the Tony Gonzalez's of the world were really rare. And the tight ends that you saw on the field were essentially just the 6 offensive linemen, So for this, they could be very dynamic together. And I think they could be the best tight end duo in the game. George Kittle's already the best tight end in the game. So to add anything to that is just, a fluff. It's just icing on the cake. But to say they're the best duo ever, they need to do it for an extended period of time, but the potential is there, at least for a season, for them to have the most prolific tight end pair season in NFL history.
Certainly some high praise. Now, let me ask you this. Does this automatically mean Ross Dwelley's out of there? Or I know you touched on possibly some 3 tight end sets as well. Do you think Ross Dwelley's still in the mix, or do you think the Jordan Reed signing kind of has the writing on the wall for him?
It's really dependent because they also drafted another tight end in the draft. And they've done it 3 out of the 4 years that John and Kyle have been here. They've drafted a tight end. So, it's between Dwelley and who's the guy that drafted this? Charlie Warner. Mm-hmm. It's going to be between him and Charlie Warner, and it's probably whoever performs the most is going to be there. Worst comes to worst, Dwelley's there or Warner is there if Reed goes down. I'm sure they're going to have those guys' number on speed dial just in case. But it's tough to say at this time. It's all about production. Dwelley came up big in a few a few situations last year. So I think that he would have an inside track to stay, especially when you think about, Garrick retired, Toilolo's gone, so if they keep, it's conceivable with the expanded rosters that they can keep 4 tight ends. And if that's the case, then I think Dwelley would stick around.
Yeah, like you said, it's always tough to kind of predict these things in the beginning of August, especially the way this offseason is going.
Especially this year, yeah, because we don't. I mean, I'm not 100% sure on what even the final roster count is and how many guys. I think are they allowed to have 80?
That's what I've heard.
75 or 80. Yeah. So then one of the guys maybe would be inactive unless they needed him. But yeah, with 80 guys on a roster, or 75 or 80 or whatever it is, I can totally see them carrying 4 tight ends. I can totally see them carrying all the running backs that they have, that we were talking about. Oh, who gets cut from the running back group, or, the wide receivers. Maybe Travis Benjamin makes 49ers after all. Who knows? 17 is a bad luck number for 49ers, but who knows? It's just one of those things where this is such a weird topsy-turvy offseason that nothing would surprise me and everything is unexpected at the same time.
Well, guys, I think we'll leave it at that. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Our handles are below on the screen. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and drop a comment below. What do you think of the signing of Jordan Reed? Do you think the 49ers made a really good move by signing him, or do you think it's just going to flame out?
Go ahead and click the bell for all your notifications. We're bringing you 49ers news all the time. Zach killing it with the interviews lately, man. I love it.
Thanks, man. Take care, guys.
Bye. Go Niners.